The transfer alert came before she could even blink. 5,000 $5,000 received. Mara Jensen stared at her cracked phone screen, her heart thudding so hard it made her vision blur. That couldn't be right. She'd only sent one message, 12 words she'd written with shaking hands at midnight while standing in the baby aisle of a 24-hour store. Ben, I'm sorry to ask again, but I need $50 for formula. Please don't tell Mom. She had hit send too fast, desperate and half crying, her son's hungry cries still echoing in her ears. She didn't even notice she'd typed the wrong number. Now there was the alert. $5,000. The store's fluorescent light hummed above her, turning the whole moment unreal. Mara checked the message thread again, thinking maybe she'd hallucinated it. But no, the reply sat there, cold and deliberate. Buy what you need. Don't pay me back. She read it 3 times before typing a shaky reply. Who is this? There was no answer. I think you sent this to the wrong person. Still nothing. Then just as she was about to put the phone away, another message appeared. You texted the right one. Her breath caught. She looked around the store as though someone were watching her between the aisles of diapers and discount cereal. The next morning, Mara woke to sunlight filtering through thin curtains and the sound of her baby's soft whimpers. Her phone buzzed again. A new notification. You should eat something too. Attached was a digital receipt, an online grocery order. Milk, bread, fruit, baby wipes, all delivered to her address. A chill rippled through her. She hadn't given anyone her address. She typed furiously, How do you know where I live? For a long time there was no reply. Then, Don't worry, you're safe. That was enough to send her pulse racing. Safe? That wasn't reassuring. It was terrifying. She almost blocked the number right then. But then she looked down at her son, Noah, his tiny fist curled against his chest. The last can of formula was already half empty. Whoever you are, she muttered, thank you, but this has to stop. Still, she didn't block the number. That afternoon, curiosity, or maybe fear, drove her to check where the money came from. Her bank said the deposit was legitimate, wired from an international account under the name Albright Holdings. She froze. The name sounded familiar. She Googled it, and within seconds her jaw dropped. Jackson Albright, founder and CEO of Helix Core Industries, billionaire, philanthropist. Ghost of the business world, rarely seen, rarely quoted, yet somehow everywhere. She stared at his photo, sharp-edged face, gray eyes, no smile. The kind of man who probably didn't even use his own phone. There was no way this was real. Why would a man like that send her money? She typed again. Are you Jackson Albright? A minute passed. Then came the reply. That depends. Are you okay now? Mira's breath hitched. It wasn't an answer. If this is a prank, I'll report it. Do that if you must. But buy the formula first. She let out a shaky laugh. The nerve of him, whoever he was, to talk like that. But she did buy it. And when Noah finished his first full bottle in days, a deep, unexpected wave of gratitude hit her. Over the next few days, their messages continued. Short, careful. He never offered his name, and she never shared hers. It was an unspoken rule between them, an invisible line neither wanted to cross. Yet every message felt personal. You sound tired. You should rest when the baby sleeps. There's a quiet strength in people who keep going when no one sees them. She caught herself smiling at the screen more often than she wanted to admit. He was kind, but in a distant, almost clinical way, like someone who understood pain only through memory. Then one night she broke the rule. Why are you doing this? Minutes passed, then an answer came. Because I remember what it's like to lose someone you can't save. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, unsure what to say. She didn't know what he lost, but she knew that tone, the raw edge of grief. She sent a single message back. I'm sorry. There was no reply that night. 2 days later, she got a text from him again. I'd like to meet you. No conditions, just coffee. Her stomach twisted. She knew better than to meet strangers, especially ones who sent mysterious money and quotes that belonged in philosophy books. But something inside her whispered that this wasn't a threat. It was unfinished. Why? She typed. Because I think we both need to understand why that message found me. Her hands shook as she read it again. That message, her desperate plea for $50, had somehow crossed the digital universe and landed in the inbox of a man who could buy a small country. The universe didn't make mistakes like that. Did it? She closed her eyes, thinking of the night she'd written it. Tired, embarrassed, whispering to her phone while Noah cried in her arms. Maybe it wasn't just a mistake. Maybe it was a beginning. Fine, she typed finally. Tomorrow. Noon. The reply came instantly. Helix Tower, 47th floor. Ask for me by name. And just like that, the man behind the messages had a name. Jackson Albright. Mira stared at it until the letters blurred, realizing for the first time that her life was about to divide cleanly into two halves, before the text and after it. When Mira stepped into the Helix Tower lobby, she felt like she'd entered another world. The air was crisp and cool, humming faintly with the low rhythm of hidden machinery. Floors gleamed like mirrors, and people in sleek suits moved with the precision of clockwork. For a moment, she wondered if security would stop her just for existing there. Her thrift store blouse, her scuffed shoes, the faint milk stain on her sleeve. She almost turned back. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. You're early. Take the elevator to 47. Someone will meet you. Her throat tightened. She looked toward the elevators. Tall glass doors rimmed with silver light. No turning back now. The ride felt endless. The elevator whispered upward, floor numbers flashing by like a countdown. By the time it stopped, her reflection looked pale and frightened. The doors slid open to reveal a woman waiting, tall, composed, with auburn hair tied back in a perfect knot. Her expression softened when she saw Mara's baby carrier. You must be Ms. Jensen, she said, her voice calm and professional. I'm Ava Lynn, Mr. Albright's chief of staff. He's expecting you. Ava led her down a quiet corridor lined with frosted glass panels. Everything about this floor was restrained elegance, subtle, controlled, as if chaos wasn't allowed to exist here. Can I ask something? Mara said as they walked. Of course. Why me? Why does he do things like this? Ava smiled faintly, as though she'd heard the question before. Mr. Albright has his reasons. You'll understand soon. The words did nothing to calm her nerves. The office at the end of the hall looked more like a sanctuary than a workspace. Minimalist, open, overlooking the skyline. A faint scent of cedar filled the air. And there he was. Jackson Albright stood by the window, tall and still, dressed in a gray shirt with rolled sleeves. He turned as they entered, and his eyes, gray, like rain caught in glass, found her immediately. Ms. Jensen, he said, thank you for coming. His voice wasn't what she expected. It was low even, carrying a calm authority that didn't need to announce itself. She shifted Noah's carrier on her shoulder. I'm not sure why I'm here, or what you want. Jackson nodded, gesturing toward the chair opposite his desk. Sit, please. She hesitated, then obeyed. Ava quietly slipped out, closing the door behind her. For a moment, there was only silence and the sound of Noah's soft breathing. Jackson leaned against the edge of his desk, watching her carefully. I imagine this must feel strange. That's one way to put it, she said. I didn't bring you here to frighten you, he said, or to make you feel indebted. I just wanted to meet the woman who sent me that message. Mira's face flushed. That was a mistake. I meant to text my brother. I know, she blinked. You know? I traced the message, he said simply. Not to invade your privacy. I needed to make sure it wasn't a scam. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. And instead you sent me $5,000. I didn't send it instead. I sent it because you asked for 50. Her brow furrowed. That doesn't make sense. It does, he said quietly. Most people who lie would have asked for more. His words landed heavier than she expected. He studied her for a moment longer before turning to the window again. You used to work in research, didn't you? Biochemistry? Her stomach dropped. How do you know that? I looked you up, he said. You were on track for a doctorate before you left the program 3 years ago. She stared at him, stunned that he knew. I had my son, she said softly, and my husband left. Life got smaller. Jackson nodded, his expression unreadable. Life has a way of doing that. He paused, then said, I have an offer for you. That startled her. An offer? Yes, a position at Helix Core, Internal Analytics Division. She blinked. You're offering me a job? He smiled faintly. You thought I brought you here for charity? I thought maybe you were insane. Jackson chuckled. Quiet, surprised, genuine. I've been called worse. Then he grew serious again. You're meticulous, Ms. Jensen. You've survived without help for years. You understand systems, both human and mathematical. I could use someone like that. But I haven't worked in years, she said. That's irrelevant, he said. What matters is how you think. Mara looked down at her hands. This was impossible. People like him didn't just hand jobs to single mothers with gaps in their resumes. It sounded too good to be real, too good to trust. What's the catch, Wayne? She asked quietly. No catch, Jackson said. Just work, real work. You'd start small, but it's stable, and you'd have benefits, flexibility, a chance to rebuild. Her voice trembled. Why me? Because I believe in investing in people who haven't stopped fighting, he said, and because I think you're one of them. The room felt suddenly smaller, the weight of his words pressing in. I don't know what to say, she managed. Say yes, Jackson replied simply. She looked at him, trying to see what kind of man did something like this. There was no pity in his eyes, only conviction, as if he wasn't saving her, but offering her a chance to stand beside him. Finally, she said, All right, I'll take it. His smile was subtle, but it reached his eyes this time. Good. Ava will handle the paperwork. You start Monday. She rose slowly, still dazed. Thank you, she said, her voice unsteady. Jackson nodded once. Don't thank me. Earn it. In the elevator ride down, Mara could barely feel her legs. She stared at Noah asleep in his carrier and whispered, What just happened? A stranger had upended her entire life with one act of reckless kindness. And now she wasn't sure whether to be grateful or afraid of what would come next. Mira Jensen didn't sleep much that weekend. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jackson Albright's calm, unreadable face, or heard his voice saying, Earn it. Monday came too fast. She left Noah with her neighbor Teresa, triple-checked the diaper bag like a nervous ritual, and took the subway into a world she'd never belonged to. The Helix Tower loomed over the skyline like something carved from steel and ambition. Inside, Ava Lynn was waiting. As polished as ever, she greeted Mara with a warm professionalism that was somehow comforting instead of intimidating. Welcome to Helix Core, Ava said. Let's get you set up. They began with orientation, except there was no slideshow or HR pep talk. Instead, Ava handed her a sleek tablet. Your workstation is on the 38th floor, she said. You'll report directly to me and occasionally to Mr. Albright. Occasionally, Mara asked. Ava gave a knowing smile. When he appears, Jackson has selective visibility. Mara couldn't tell if that was admiration or warning. Her new workspace overlooked the city, with glass walls, minimalist desks, and the soft hum of climate control. Everyone seemed busy, but eerily quiet, like they were afraid to waste even oxygen. Don't let the silence fool you, Ava said, walking beside her. Every keyboard here runs the heartbeat of a billion-dollar organism. It only sounds calm. She guided Mara to a desk at the end of the row. This will be yours. Your main task is to review audit reports and verify compliance across departments. Think of it as cleaning the arteries before a heart attack. Mira smiled nervously. That's, vivid. You'll do fine, Ava said. Then her tone softened. And for what it's worth, I think Jackson made the right call bringing you here. Mira hesitated. You mean, you know why? I know him, Ava said, choosing her words carefully. He doesn't make personal decisions lightly. If you're here, it's for a reason. By noon, Mira was deep in data. The numbers comforted her. Predictable, logical, obedient. For years, her life had been ruled by the chaos of survival. Now, for the first time, the world made sense again in rows and columns. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice the man standing behind her until he cleared his throat. Efficient, he said. She looked up and froze. Jackson. He wore no tie today, just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The contrast between him and the rest of the building was almost cinematic. He seemed too human for the glass and chrome around him. Mr. Albright, she said quickly, standing. He shook his head. Sit. I'm not a headmaster. She obeyed, heart hammering. He glanced at her screen. You've already flagged 2 discrepancies. They're small, she said. Could be entry errors. Or symptoms, he replied. Small errors hide big ones. Mira hesitated. You think there's something wrong? Jackson's gaze was steady. I think something's missing. She waited, but he didn't elaborate. Instead, he looked past her to the window. Tell me something, Ms. Jensen. Why did you stop working in research? The question caught her off guard. I had Noah, she said. And then, I didn't have much choice. You can't pipette samples with a baby on your shoulder. He nodded almost absently. You sound like someone who still misses it. I do, she admitted. Science made sense. People didn't. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. We have that in common. Over the next few days, their paths crossed more often. Jackson never hovered, but his presence lingered like static in the air. He would appear without warning, reading over her shoulder, asking questions that seemed unrelated, then vanishing again. Once, during a late afternoon review, she noticed him standing by the window silent. You do that a lot, she said before she could stop herself. He turned. Do what? Stare out there like you're waiting for an answer. Maybe I am, he said. To what? He looked at her, eyes unreadable. To whether building all this was worth losing everything else. The honesty in his voice unsettled her. She wanted to ask what he'd lost, but didn't. Some questions, she sensed, were still wounds. By the end of the week, Mara had uncovered something odd. One of the smaller vendor accounts, Trinox Solutions, showed repeated microtransactions, tiny amounts just under the approval threshold. They were easy to miss, but the pattern was too perfect. She stayed late that evening, analyzing the trail. When she finally gathered the files, she sent a note to Jackson. Subject, potential anomaly. I may have found a recurring discrepancy in the financial subledgers. Small payments, patterned, deliberate, possibly internal. MJ, his reply came 3 minutes later. Don't forward it to anyone. We'll discuss in person tomorrow. 7 a.m. No greeting, no signature, just instruction. That night, sleep refused to come. She rocked Noah to sleep, her mind running through every possible scenario. She didn't know what she had stumbled onto, but she could feel its weight. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of numbers rearranging themselves into names she didn't recognize. And in the morning, when she returned to her desk, she found a note waiting for her. Handwritten. Trust no one but me. It wasn't signed, but she didn't need it to be. The handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp, deliberate, precise. Jackson Albright's. The city outside looked different now. Brighter, but not safer. For the first time since this all began, Mira realized she wasn't just part of a story. She was standing in the middle of something that could destroy everything she'd just begun to rebuild. The note burned in Mira's pocket all morning. She told herself it was probably nothing, just Jackson being cautious, like all billionaires were. But something about the way the ink pressed into the paper, each stroke deliberate, made her uneasy. When the elevator doors opened on the 47th floor, she found him waiting. Close the door, he said without preamble. She did. His office was quieter than usual, the windows tinted darker. Jackson stood by a projection screen filled with cascading data, financial statements, vendor chains, transaction routes. You said you found a pattern, he began, eyes still on the numbers. Show me. Mira pulled a small drive from her bag and connected it to his system. The data unfolded like a spiderweb. These payments, she said, pointing, run through legitimate vendors but get fragmented across multiple sub-accounts. Each one's under the approval limit, so no one flags them. He nodded slowly. How long has this been happening? At least 6 months, maybe longer. And you think it's internal? She hesitated. Yes, someone high enough to know how to hide it, but careful enough not to trip the system. Jackson's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. I suspected as much, he said quietly. Our CFO, Vincent Harmon, handles high-value procurement approvals. He's good at hiding in plain sight. Mira frowned. If you already knew, why not expose him? Because I don't have proof. Not yet. He turned to her. What you found, This is the first real thread. She felt her pulse quicken. Then what do? We pull it, he said simply, but carefully. If Vincent realizes we're onto him, he'll bury everything before we can act. They began working in secret. Late nights, encrypted messages, data packets moved through private channels. Mara would stay after everyone else left, combing through the ledgers while Jackson cross-referenced older contracts. The deeper they dug, the stranger it became. The shell companies weren't random. They were named after mythological figures: Orpheus, Selene, Aegis. Elegant, deliberate, almost poetic. Whoever did this, Mira murmured one evening, wanted to be found. Eventually. Jackson looked at her across the glowing table. Or wanted to mock whoever was too slow to see it. One night around midnight, Mira's email pinged. From Vincent Harmon. Subject: Late night, Ms. Jensen? Her stomach dropped. Message: I noticed your access logs on the internal audit server. New blood showing initiative. I admire that. Just be careful which stones you turn over. Some of us prefer our ghosts undisturbed. She stared at the screen. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat wrapped in charm. Before she could decide what to do, her phone buzzed. Jackson, don't respond. Delete it. He's testing you. Testing me? She typed. He suspects someone's helping me. Let him think it's me alone? And what about me? You keep working. Quietly, she deleted Vincent's email, but his words clung to her long after. Some of us prefer our ghosts undisturbed. The next morning, the office buzzed with whispers. A compliance officer had resigned suddenly. No notice, no explanation. Ava met Mara by the coffee station, her usual calm replaced by unease. Something's happening, Ava said in a low voice. Vincent's been in meetings all morning with the board. Jackson's name came up. Mira froze. What do you mean? I mean there's talk of impropriety, mismanagement. They're setting him up for something. By noon, Jackson's office was locked, and his assistant had vanished. The corridors that usually hummed with quiet efficiency now pulsed with tension. Mira found him in the lower archives, sleeves rolled, hands covered in dust. They're turning this on you, she said. I know, he replied. Vincent's playing his move. So what's ours? He handed her a sealed folder. Inside is everything we've found so far. Encrypted copies. Keller, an old contact of mine, former forensic accountant for the Bureau, will help us process it off-site. I need you to take this to her. She blinked. You're asking me to smuggle data out of your own company? I'm asking you to save it, he said, because if I fall, they'll erase every trace. His gaze softened then, just slightly. You shouldn't be involved. You have your son. You can still walk away. Mira met his eyes. You hired me because I don't run from fights. A flicker of something like pride crossed his face. Then go. Tonight. That night, Mira rode the subway, clutching the folder under her coat like it was radioactive. The city outside blurred into streaks of light. Every stop felt like a risk. Every passing glance made her heart lurch. She reached a nondescript building near the riverfront, a converted warehouse with no sign. Keller met her inside. The woman was compact, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of posture that said she'd once interrogated men twice her size. You're the new recruit, Keller said. Jackson said you'd come. Mara handed over the folder. He said you can help him. Keller's lips curved into a thin smile. Help him? No. I can help the truth. Whether it helps him depends on what we find. She opened the folder and whistled softly at the contents. Someone's been clever. Mira exhaled. So it's real? Oh, it's real, Keller said. And whoever's behind this knew exactly how to bury it, but not well enough. Mara's phone buzzed again. One new message. You did well. Jackson's words, simple but grounding. She typed back, What now? Now we wait. And when the time's right, we expose everything. Mara looked around the dim warehouse, the hum of servers rising like distant thunder. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. Mara had thought she understood fear, the kind that came from not knowing how she'd afford the next can of formula or when the landlord would knock. But corporate fear was different. It wore suits, spoke in whispers, and smiled while tightening a noose. 3 days after she handed the folder to Keller, Helix Tower felt colder. Meetings were canceled. Security cameras turned toward doors they'd never watched before. Even Ava moved differently, her polite warmth replaced with silent calculation. Jackson hadn't been in the building since that morning. The whisper said board review, allegations, audit suspension. To everyone else, it looked like a crisis of leadership. But Mara knew it was Vincent's move. She was in her office late that night when Keller called. "Your CFO's slick," Keller said, her voice low and crisp. "The shell accounts lead through offshore entities, classic laundering route. But there's something else. He's covering tracks in real time." "What do you mean?" "Someone's accessing the servers right now, purging transactional data. Whoever it is has root access." Mira's stomach turned cold. "Vincent?" "Probably, but he's careful. Doesn't touch anything traceable directly to him. If we want proof, we'll need bait." Mara hesitated. "Bait?" Keller chuckled. "A fake discrepancy, one that looks too tempting to ignore." The next morning, Mara met Jackson in a private cafe far from Helix Tower. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "They're closing in," he said quietly. "The board's preparing a motion to suspend me. Vincent's behind it." "Keller thinks we can trap him," Mara said. "If he touches falsified data, we can prove tampering." He studied her, thoughtful. "That's dangerous. He has eyes everywhere." "So do we," she said. For a moment he smiled, brief but real. "You're starting to sound like me." They worked for hours in silence, building the digital snare. Keller coordinated remotely, inserting a subtle anomaly into Helix's procurement database, a fabricated vendor linked to one of Vincent's shell companies. If he moved to delete it, the system would autolog his credentials. All Mara had to do was monitor from her end. "Once he takes the bait," Jackson said, "we release everything. Keller forwards the logs to the board and the Attorney General. Vincent won't have time to hide." Mira glanced up from her screen. "And if he doesn't?" Jackson's gaze hardened. "Then he'll come for us instead." By midnight, Helix Tower was nearly empty. Only the distant hum of servers filled the air. Mira sat at her desk, the monitor glowing in the dark, watching the code scroll. Keller's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. "Anomaly's live. Timer's running. If your CFO's as arrogant as I think, he won't be able to resist cleaning it." Her pulse thrummed. Every passing second felt heavier. Then, movement. A login request appeared. "Varmony Helix Core. Int." "Got him," Mara whispered. "Let it run," Keller said. "He's digging." Lines of data flickered by as Vincent accessed the dummy vendor profile. Mara watched him flag, edit, and attempt to delete it. "Come on," Keller muttered. "Touch the wrong field. There." A red line blinked. Unauthorized deletion logged. Mira exhaled shakily. "We have it." Keller's tone turned triumphant. "Not just that, he triggered a full trace. His admin key is now tied to every falsified account. It's over." But before Mara could reply, her screen went black. "What the?" The speakers hissed. "Mara," Keller's voice distorted. "You just lost connection." Then silence. A faint chill crawled up her spine. The office lights flickered, and from down the hall came the echo of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. She closed her laptop and stood, heart pounding. "Working late, Ms. Jensen?" The voice froze her. Vincent. He appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed, holding a glass of something amber and expensive. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're new here," he said conversationally. "And yet, somehow, your name's been on half the audit reports this month." "I'm thorough," she managed. "Oh, I believe that," Vincent said. He stepped closer, setting his glass on her desk. "In fact, I think you're a little too thorough." Mira swallowed. "If you have a problem, take it to Jackson." He laughed. "Jackson won't be taking calls for a while." Something in her chest went cold. "What did you do?" "Nothing illegal," he said smoothly. "Yet. But you should know better than to dig where you don't belong. People who work for me usually learn that early." He leaned closer, his cologne sharp and suffocating. "Consider this your only warning." Then he picked up his glass and walked out, leaving silence in his wake. Mira's hands shook as she reopened her system. The files were gone, but the encrypted copy Keller had made was already transmitting to a backup server. She texted Jackson immediately. "He knows, we caught him. But he knows." The reply came fast. "Get out. Now." She didn't argue. She grabbed her bag, powered off her workstation, and hurried to the elevators. By the time she reached the street, the first raindrops were falling. Her phone buzzed again. Keller. "He's desperate," Keller said. "That means he's cornered. Tomorrow we drop everything to the authorities. You did good, kid." But as Mara turned toward the subway, she caught a glimpse of a black car idling across the street. The window lowered just enough for her to see Vincent's reflection in the rain-slick glass. He raised his glass in mock salute before the car pulled away into the night. Mira stood frozen under the streetlight, drenched and trembling, not from fear but realization. She wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was part of the war. Rain streaked across the glass of Mara's apartment window, blurring the city into a smear of gray and gold. She hadn't slept. Every sound, every horn, every creak felt like a warning. Noah slept peacefully in his crib, the steady rhythm of his breathing the only thing anchoring her to calm. Mira checked her phone again. No new messages from Jackson, no updates from Keller. Just silence. She made a bottle, forcing her hands to stay steady. If this was fear, it had shape and weight now, something solid pressing on her ribs. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. "Ms. Jensen, it's Keller. We've got him dead to rights. Meeting at the Helix sub-basement. Access via South Dock. Bring your ID. We'll close this tonight." Mira frowned. Keller never used unverified channels. "This isn't your number," she replied. "Burner. Needed to move quick. Vincent's cleaning house. Come now, Jackson's waiting." Her stomach clenched. Something didn't feel right. But then she thought of Jackson, his career hanging by a thread, the evidence in Keller's hands, the danger Vincent posed. She looked at Noah, sleeping safely, and whispered, "I'll be back soon." The South Dock entrance was deserted, the air thick with the scent of wet concrete and diesel. Mara's shoes splashed through puddles as she descended the ramp toward the security door. Her badge beeped red twice before turning green. The hallway beyond was dim, the hum of machinery echoing through steel walls. "Keller?" she called softly. A voice came from the end of the corridor. "Down here." She followed the sound, her pulse hammering, but when she turned the corner, she froze. It wasn't Keller waiting for her. Vincent stood there, perfectly composed, phone in one hand, smile razor sharp. "I knew you couldn't resist," he said. "Loyalty's such a predictable weakness." Mara took a step back. "Where's Keller?" "Oh, Keller's fine," Vincent said, slipping his phone into his pocket. "For now." He gestured toward a nearby monitor. It flickered to life, showing grainy footage. Keller bound to a chair, bruised but alive. Mara's blood went cold. "You're insane." "I'm practical," Vincent said smoothly. "And you, Ms. Jensen, are inconvenient. Jackson should have learned his lesson years ago. Trusting lost causes never ends well." Mara forced herself to stay calm. "You can threaten me all you want. The evidence is already out there. Keller's got backups." Vincent chuckled. "Backups?" He stepped closer. "Do you really think I've run a multinational operation for 15 years without knowing how to clean up a few files?" He leaned in, voice low. "But you're still useful. You're the perfect fall girl, the struggling mother, the sympathetic outsider. It's poetic." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about rewriting the story," he said. "You accessed company systems illegally. You moved confidential data off-site. You violated security protocols. It's all documented by you." Her breath caught. "You forged logs." "I corrected them," he said. "History belongs to those who edit it first." Mira's mind raced. Keller was trapped. Jackson, if he was even still free, was likely under surveillance. There was no one left to call, unless... Her hand inched toward her phone. Vincent's eyes narrowed. "Don't!" Too late. She hit the power button twice, triggering the emergency recording Keller had installed on her phone days ago. The screen stayed dark, but it was transmitting audio straight to Keller's secure relay. "You think you're clever," Vincent said, "but by the time your little friends hear this, you'll be gone. Then finish it, she said, because I'm not scared of you anymore. For a moment, he actually hesitated. Something about the steadiness in her voice, the lack of pleading, seemed to unsettle him. Then, fine. He reached for his coat pocket. Before he could move further, a shout echoed down the corridor. Step away from her, Jackson. He emerged from the shadows, a gun leveled with unflinching precision. His expression was carved from stone. Vincent's mask slipped. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, Jackson said. But then, corruption rarely stays upstairs. Vincent's eyes darted between them, calculating. You don't have the guts. Jackson's tone was cold. Try me. The silence stretched. One heartbeat, two. Then Vincent smiled thinly. You always were sentimental. He dropped his coat, kicked it toward them, and turned as if to walk away. The motion was fluid, casual, until the metallic glint of a hidden weapon flashed in his hand. The shot rang out, echoing through the corridor like thunder. Mira ducked, heart slamming in her chest. Another shot followed, then another. The lights flickered and smoke filled the air. When the noise died, Vincent lay on the floor, his gun skittering across the concrete. Jackson stood motionless, breathing hard, the pistol still raised. Mira scrambled to her feet. Are you? He nodded once. He's alive. Barely. Vincent groaned, blood staining his shirt. You can't win. The board will bury you. Jackson knelt beside him. No, you buried yourself. He turned to Mira. We need to go. Now. They drove through the rain in silence, the city lights a blur around them. Mira clutched Noah's blanket in her hands, grounding herself in something pure. Finally, she spoke. What happens now? Jackson's eyes stayed on the road. Keller's safe. The files you captured, they transmitted before he shut down your system. We have everything we need. And Vincent? He'll face justice, he said. Maybe for the first time in his life. Mira looked at him. His expression was unreadable, but beneath the exhaustion, she saw something else. Resolve, and maybe something softer. You shouldn't have come for me, she whispered. Jackson gave a faint smile. You texted the wrong man once. Maybe this time, I decided to be the right one. Outside, dawn was breaking over the city, washing away the night. For the first time, Mira believed they might actually make it out alive. The storm finally broke by morning, but Mira couldn't shake the feeling that they were still caught in it. Jackson parked the car 2 blocks from a warehouse Keller had repurposed as their safe site. The structure looked abandoned, windows boarded, a half-collapsed sign hanging over the door. Inside, however, it was alive. Rows of servers humming in a makeshift command center, cables snaking across the floor like veins. Keller sat at a terminal, a bandage over her temple and a half-drunk cup of coffee beside her. She looked up as they entered. Nice of you to show up, she said dryly. You brought the party? Jackson gave a brief nod. Vincent's down, alive for now. Keller leaned back, letting out a long whistle. Hell of a night, then. You could say that, Mira murmured. Keller gestured to a screen filled with code and network nodes. While you two were playing cloak and dagger, I finished tracing the data chain. Vincent didn't act alone. He's been funneling money to a holding company that connects to 2 board members and an offshore biotech firm. Jackson's jaw tightened. Which ones? Paula Crane and Dennis Lang, Keller said. They signed off on every one of his transfers. My guess? Vincent was the face. They were the hands. Mira sank into a chair. So this goes higher than the CFO. Oh, sweetheart, Keller said, smirking without humor. It always does. They spent the next few hours combing through evidence. Mira handled most of the forensic verification, cross-referencing signatures, timestamps, vendor codes, while Keller decrypted the offshore ledgers. Jackson paced, occasionally stopping to read a line of data or issue quiet instructions. At one point, he paused behind Mira, scanning the lines she'd flagged. You've got a good eye, he said softly. She didn't look up. It's easy when you've lived your life catching mistakes before they destroy you. Something flickered in his expression, a recognition that didn't need words. He walked away, but not before she caught the faintest trace of a smile. By noon, they had enough evidence to implicate half of Helix's upper management in what Keller called the biggest self-inflicted wound in corporate history. Keller cracked her knuckles. I've packaged the report. It's time-stamped, signed, and ready to go public. But once I push this, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. You sure you want the world to see? Jackson's gaze moved between her and Mira. Once it's out, Helix is finished as we know it. Stock will crash, jobs will vanish, but it'll be honest again. He turned to Mira. What do you think? She blinked. You're asking me? You're the only one here who doesn't have something to gain or lose by this. Mira hesitated. If we hold it back, they'll just rebuild the rot somewhere else. You said once that small errors hide big ones. This isn't a company anymore. It's a lie with a logo. Jackson nodded slowly. Then we end it. Keller hit the key. The upload began, an unstoppable chain reaction. Data flowed into secure servers, mirrored across networks, and queued for release to regulatory agencies and media outlets. There it goes, Keller murmured. No turning back now. Mara leaned back, exhausted. But beneath the fatigue, there was relief, like air after drowning. Then Jackson's phone vibrated. He checked the screen and froze. It's Ava, he answered, his tone clipped. Ava, where are you? Her voice came through faint, shaky. Jackson, they know. Paula's people. They raided your office. Security's locking down the building. Mira's pulse spiked. She's still in there? Ava continued, breathless. They're scrubbing everything. Servers, files, access logs. And they have a warrant for your arrest. Jackson's voice hardened. Under what charge? Corporate espionage, fraud, and endangerment, Ava said. Vincent's lawyers filed it before he went down. You're being painted as the mastermind. Keller swore. Classic reversal. They're making him the fall guy. Jackson exhaled slowly, steadying himself. Listen to me, Ava. Get out. Don't try to save anything. We already have what we need. Where will you go? She asked. Somewhere they can't touch me. He hung up. Keller looked at him sharply. You realize the second this goes public, you're a walking target. Jackson's tone was calm, almost resigned. I've been one since the day I let greed walk through my doors. They stayed in the warehouse until nightfall. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets outside slick and glimmering under neon lights. Mira found Jackson standing by the loading bay, watching the water drip from the roof. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, and the faint bruising on his jaw caught the fading light. You don't have to disappear, she said quietly. Yes, I do, he said. The board will collapse, the company will fragment, and I'll be the name they pin it on. That's fine. I built Helix to change lives. Maybe destroying it is the only way to keep that promise. Mara stepped closer. And what about you? He looked at her, really looked, for the first time in days. Me? You could start over. You're not your mistakes. Jackson's expression softened, but there was sadness in it. Funny, you said the same thing to me once, before either of us realized what we were fighting. She smiled faintly. Then maybe I was right. A silence stretched between them, fragile but charged. Then Keller's voice broke it from across the room. Upload complete, she shouted. The world officially knows Helix Core's dirty laundry. Mira and Jackson exchanged a look, a mixture of relief and inevitability. It's done, he said. For better or worse, she replied. As Keller began securing her servers, Jackson turned toward the open door, the cool night air spilling in. You should get Noah, he said quietly. Take him somewhere, far from this mess. I'll handle what comes next. Mira reached for his arm. You don't have to do this alone. He met her gaze. I've been alone for a long time, but thank you for reminding me what right feels like. He pulled away gently, stepping into the night. Mira stood there watching until he disappeared into the shadows. Outside, the city thrummed with the oblivious pulse of ordinary life. Somewhere an empire was falling apart piece by piece, and for the first time in years, Mira didn't feel powerless watching it happen, because she'd helped strike the match. The story broke before dawn. By the time sunlight hit the skyline, every major outlet was running the same headline. Helix Core implodes, CEO accused of cover-up, while whistleblower reveals massive corporate fraud. Mira read it on her cracked phone screen, while holding Noah against her shoulder. The morning air in her small apartment felt too thin. Every detail was there. The forged ledgers, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. Her name appeared only once, buried in a paragraph describing a junior analyst who assisted in exposing the corruption. But Jackson's name was everywhere. She switched on the news. Footage played of reporters swarming the Helix Tower entrance. Cameras flashing, microphones raised like weapons. Then came the image that made her stomach drop. Jackson being escorted through a side door by two federal agents, his expression unreadable beneath the chaos. The anchor's voice cut through the static. Mr. Albright faces allegations of corporate conspiracy and evidence tampering. His legal team has not yet issued a statement. Mira turned off the TV. The room plunged into silence. He had told her he'd handle what came next. She hadn't realized he meant alone. Later that morning, Keller called. "I assume you've seen the news," Keller said without preamble. "I saw it," Mira replied. "They arrested him." "They detained him," Keller corrected. "Big difference. But yeah, they're making him the face of this thing. Paula Crane's already spinning it. She's claiming Jackson knew about Vincent's laundering all along." Mira clenched her jaw. "That's a lie." "Of course it's a lie," Keller said, "but it's a good one. And right now, truth doesn't move as fast as headlines." Mira paced the room, rocking Noah in her arms. "There has to be something we can do." "There might be," Keller said, "but it means going deeper. We still have fragments of Paula's communications. If we can tie her to the offshore transfers, we can clear Jackson completely. You in?" Mira didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need." That afternoon, Keller met her in person at a small diner on the city's edge. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, a manila envelope clutched in one hand. "Here," she said, sliding the folder across the table. "Paula used a private line routed through an encrypted Helix network, the kind of system designed to delete itself every 72 hours. But we caught a partial backup before the servers were wiped. You'll need to rebuild it." Mira flipped through the documents, hex strings, timestamps, fragments of email headers. "This could take days." "Then don't sleep," Keller said simply. Mira looked up. "Why me? You're the expert." "Because she doesn't know you're still in play," Keller said. "She'll be watching me. But you're invisible." Back in her apartment, Mara worked through the night. Her laptop hummed under the weight of data reconstruction. Noah slept beside her, the glow of the screen washing over his small, peaceful face. Bit by bit, the fragments began to form. Most of the files were too corrupted to open, but a few lines emerged, snippets of conversations between Paula and Vincent. "Transfer the funds before quarterly audit. Albright suspects something. Control the narrative. The Jensen woman can be useful. Don't discard yet." Mira froze. Her name. She scrolled faster, searching for more. Another line appeared, this one chilling in its clarity. "If necessary, pin it on her?" Sympathy sells. The realization hit like a slap. Paula had never intended for Jackson to take the fall. Mira had been the target all along, the sympathetic whistleblower, the face of misdirection. Her phone buzzed. A text from Keller. "Anything yet?" She typed back with trembling fingers. "More than enough." By dawn, Keller had the files decrypted and cross-referenced. The chain was airtight. Paula Crane and Dennis Lang had orchestrated the laundering scheme, using Vincent as a front and planning to sacrifice Jackson and Mira when it collapsed. "This is gold," Keller said. "With this, the feds can't keep him. They'll have to flip the charges." Mira let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Send it to his lawyers, now." "I already did," Keller said, "but brace yourself. Paula's not the type to go down quietly." That prediction proved true within hours. By mid-morning, another headline emerged. Helix board members resign amidst expanding scandal. New evidence implicates Crane and Lang. Mira scrolled through the article, heart pounding. Keller's data had been leaked. Strategically, publicly. Every outlet ran with it, and by evening, Paula Crane was trending worldwide for all the wrong reasons. Then came a quieter message, one that made her hands tremble as she read it. "Released on bail. Don't worry about me. You did what no one else could. J." Just 3 sentences, but they undid her completely. She pressed her hand against her mouth, tears threatening to fall. Noah stirred beside her, and she whispered, "It's over, baby. It's really over." But even as she said it, part of her knew it wasn't. Jackson was free, but the fallout had just begun. Helix was collapsing. Thousands of employees would lose their jobs. The world they'd known, clean, controlled, invincible, was gone. And yet, for the first time in years, the truth was visible. That evening, Keller met her again, this time with something close to a smile. "Jackson's legal team's got enough to clear him completely," she said. "He's keeping his head down for now, probably out of the city by tomorrow." Mira nodded. "Good. He deserves peace." Keller tilted her head. "And what about you?" Mira looked at the skyline through the diner window. The lights shimmered like fragile promises in the distance. "I think I'm finally ready to build something that isn't falling apart," she said. "Maybe not for a company, maybe just for me and Noah." Keller raised her coffee cup. "To clean slates." Mira smiled, clinking hers against it. "To second chances." Outside, the night felt lighter than it had in months. The city felt different now. Quieter. Lighter. But also a little hollow. Like the air after a storm when you're not sure if it's really over. A week had passed since Helix Corp's downfall. The news cycle was still feeding on it, tearing through every scandal, every betrayal, every headline-worthy collapse. Paula Crane and Dennis Lang were facing federal indictments. Vincent Harmon was recovering in custody, guarded not by loyalty but by lawyers, and Jackson Albright had vanished. No one knew where he'd gone after posting bail. His penthouse was empty, his staff dispersed. Helix's boardroom, once a glass temple of control, now sat deserted, its logo stripped from the building facade overnight. To Mira, it felt like the closing of a chapter she'd never meant to start writing. She had returned to her small apartment in the rhythm of motherhood. The noise of the city outside was softer now, muffled by the laughter of Noah as he learned to crawl, the late-night hum of lullabies, the clinking of bottles drying on the counter. Yet sometimes when she rocked him to sleep, she caught herself glancing at her phone, half expecting a message that never came. Then one morning, it did. "Are you free to meet? One last time. Jay." Her heart stuttered. The message included a location, no fancy tower, no hidden office, just a public park overlooking the river. The kind of place where people sat to breathe when the world had spun too fast. When Mira arrived, the day was bright and windless. Children chased pigeons near the benches, and the river shimmered with afternoon light. Jackson was there, standing by the railing, dressed simply in a dark coat and scarf. He turned as she approached. "You look different," he said softly. "I sleep sometimes now," she said. "That helps." A faint smile tugged at his lips. "You deserve peace." She studied him. The lines on his face looked deeper, but his eyes, those gray, searching eyes, were the same. "You could have told me you were leaving." "I needed time," he said. "The investigation's closed. Keller's testimony cleared me completely. But even without the charges, Helix is gone. And the man who built it, he has to be gone too." "You could rebuild," she said. "Something smaller. Honest this time." He laughed under his breath. "Honesty doesn't sell well in my world." "Then find a new one." He looked at her for a long moment. "That's what you're doing, isn't it?" She nodded. "I've been offered a position at a biotech startup. Keller pulled some strings. It's not much, but it's real. Flexible hours. I can work from home with Noah." "That's perfect," he said. "You always belonged in science." "I almost forgot what that felt like." Jackson's gaze softened. "You never lost it. You just needed someone to remind you it mattered." Mira hesitated. "You did that for me." He shook his head. "You did it for yourself. I just happened to answer the wrong text at the right time." They walked along the riverbank, the silence between them comfortable for once. The city stretched behind them, rebuilding itself with the stubbornness of something too big to stay broken. After a while, Mira said quietly, "What happens to you now?" "I'm leaving the country," he said. "There's a project in Geneva, medical ethics reform, advisory work. I can still do some good, maybe. From the sidelines this time." "That's a long way from here." He smiled faintly. "The right distance, I think." She wanted to say something. Don't go or stay or at least write. But she didn't. Some goodbyes deserve silence. Instead, she asked, "Did you ever regret it? Helping me, I mean." Jackson looked out at the river. Every powerful man has a moment when he sees the empire he built turn into a prison. You were my way out, Mara. You reminded me that saving something small, one life, one truth, is still worth it. The honesty in his voice broke something in her chest. "You're not the man the headlines say you are," she said. "No," he murmured, "but maybe I'm the one you believed in." They stopped near a small garden where the path divided, one way toward the bridge, the other toward the city center. "This is where we part," he said. Mara swallowed hard. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he said gently. "You lived." A gust of wind stirred between them, carrying the faint scent of rain. Jackson reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I was going to delete this," he said, handing it to her. She unfolded it, and her breath caught. It was a screenshot of her very first message to him. "Ben, I'm sorry to ask again, but I need $50 for formula." And below it, his original reply. "Buy what you need. Don't pay me back." He smiled faintly. "I kept it as a reminder, not of what you asked for, but of what it gave me. A reason to stop hiding behind zeros and headlines." Mara blinked back tears. "You really were the wrong number." Jackson shook his head. "No, just the wrong man at the right time." He glanced once more toward the river, then stepped back. "Goodbye, Mara." Before she could speak, he turned and walked down the bridge path, his figure fading into the sunlight and the noise of the city beyond. She stood there long after he disappeared, the note clutched in her hand, the breeze drying her tears. Finally, she looked down at Noah's picture on her phone. His round cheeks, his smile. "You'll never believe this when you're older," she whispered, "but your mom once texted a billionaire by mistake, and it saved us both." The wind rustled again, soft and forgiving. For the first time, the story felt finished. The following months unfolded like a slow sunrise after a long night. The chaos of Helix faded from the headlines, replaced by newer scandals, fresher stories. The world moved on, but Mara never forgot the quiet echoes it left behind. She'd gone from sleepless panic to cautious calm, her days filled with work, her nights with Noah's laughter and soft lullabies that made the walls feel warm again. The new job was small, just a fledgling biotech firm run out of a converted warehouse. But it pulsed with energy, with hope. No polished glass towers, no expensive suits. Just people trying to build something that mattered. And for the first time in years, Mara felt like she belonged. She handled quality control and analytics, verifying molecular data for research trials. It was careful, deliberate work, honest, grounded. Everything Helix had stopped being. And sometimes when she'd catch herself frowning at a spreadsheet, she'd hear Jackson's voice in her mind. Small errors hide big ones. It made her smile every time. Spring came early that year. The city thawed, and with it, so did Mira. She began taking Noah to the same park by the river where she'd last seen Jackson. He loved watching the ducks, babbling and clapping whenever one came close enough to startle. Sometimes she'd sit on the same bench, wondering if he'd ever come back. He didn't, not in the way she expected. But one morning a letter arrived at her office. No return address, only her name written in precise, deliberate handwriting she recognized instantly. Her heart raced as she opened it. Inside was a single page, typed, signed with just one initial. Mara, by now you've rebuilt more than I ever could have. I followed your work quietly. Yes, Keller keeps me updated. She's proud of you, though she'd rather die than admit it. Geneva's been good for me. The project here focuses on global ethics in biotech, and I find it poetic that your fingerprints are still on the framework. You were right about building something smaller and honest. I suppose I've finally learned how. I hope Noah grows up in a world where people like you define science, not the ones who think owning truth is the same as creating it. If you ever find yourself in Switzerland, there's always an open door here. But if not, know that what began as an accident became the only thing that felt real. J. Mara read it 3 times before the tears came. Not because she was sad, but because the words felt like closure, like a soft curtain falling after the final act. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer beside Noah's hospital bracelet and her old Helix ID badge, a relic of the woman she used to be. Weeks later, she gave a small presentation at her new company's staff meeting. She stood in front of a dozen researchers, explaining a cleaner, more transparent model for tracking biochemical test data, something inspired by the very systems Helix had once corrupted. Her voice didn't shake. Her ideas landed. When she finished, her coworkers clapped. One of them, a young intern, approached afterward. "That was incredible," he said. "How did you come up with it?" Mira smiled. "By learning what not to do." And that was the truth. Every scar, every misstep, every wrong number had guided her here, to this exact place, at this exact moment. That evening, she took Noah back to the park. The sun was setting over the river, turning the water gold. He toddled along the path, giggling as he chased his reflection in the puddles. Mira sat on the bench and let the warmth settle over her. She looked around at the world, ordinary, imperfect, alive, and thought of all the people who had helped her reach it. Keller, fierce and relentless. Ava, brave enough to stand by the truth. And Jackson, the man who'd turned one desperate message into a redemption neither of them had expected. A stray breeze lifted her hair, carrying the faintest whisper of something familiar, like his cologne or the static hum of his office overlooking the skyline. She closed her eyes and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind. As twilight deepened, she gathered Noah into her arms. He was growing fast now, strong, curious, unafraid. The world ahead of him was uncertain, but so was life. And for Mira, that uncertainty no longer meant danger. It meant possibility. Before leaving, she glanced one last time at the river, the place where everything had begun and ended, where a wrong number had rewritten two lives. She remembered that first night, standing under flickering grocery store lights, staring at her phone, and thinking she'd made a mistake. But it hadn't been a mistake. It had been fate disguised as error. Back home, after Noah fell asleep, Mira sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and began to write. Not code, not audit reports, but something different. A story. She started with the same line that had once started everything. It was supposed to be a wrong number. And then, slowly, she began to tell it all. Not for the headlines, not for pity, but for the truth. For the proof that sometimes the smallest messages can echo the loudest. When she finished the first page, she saved the file under a single title. The message that changed everything. Then she closed the laptop, turned off the light, and let the quiet fill the room. The city outside pulsed softly in the distance, steady and alive. Tomorrow she would wake up to a new day, a life she had built from nothing but courage, a baby's laughter, and a text that had found its way to exactly the right person.